night. The stream started about 30 seconds early, so let me go ahead and just kind of clean my glasses. It is 5:59 on Mother's Day, May 11th. I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful Sunday for those of you who are moms, adoptive moms, or even mom figures. If you're a teacher, you're mom to hundreds of little kids like I am, so I'm like the school mom as well. All right, everybody, we are doing part 2 of the Hip to Be Square quilt. And the reason I decided to do a second episode is because somebody had asked me, and I've been getting this comment a lot, can you just show me how to put the blocks together because this one seems complicated? And so I decided to break it into 2 chunks, and I'm going to show you how I modified the pattern, and I'm going to show you how to get this put together. All right, so first let's start with a refresher. We have, let me show you on my desktop what we're working on today. If you did not watch episode 1, you're going to want to go back. I'm actually going to end up with 2 quilts because I decided to do the lap size. So I have enough strips to do 2 quilts, but we are working on the hip to be square, and I am doing the center of this quilt only. So the 1, 2, 3, 4 by 4, which is like 16 blocks. So instead of 32, I did 16. That means I'm going to have enough for a second quilt, and I'm pretty excited about that. All right, so let me show you what's going on. First, I'm going to show you I have a ladder behind me. I hope I don't fall off of that and break my neck, but that's what I'm doing. And so let me show you what I've done so far. So far, I have put the squares together in rows. And so the first thing that I did is I started at the top, and I just stitched the top row of blocks together, matching them carefully. And if you notice, I've been able to match all of those. But I left this bottom row down here incomplete because I'm going to show you how I'm going to put it together. And so you start from the top, you put together in pairs, and then you work your way down. And I'm going to show you how I pin, and I'm going to sew the last row before I hang this big beast up, and I show you how I'm going to do a border. Okay? Happy Mother's Day, everybody. I'm so happy that you had a little bit of time to yourself so you could make it. All right, so let me move this out of the way, and let me show you. All right, to put these rows together and make sure that they match, the most important thing is the pinning. So I'm going to show you how these go. So whenever you lay this together and you're getting ready to sew, you have to pin this. This is must do. So let me zoom out just a little bit. And so whenever you have a quilt that has all of these matching bits, you see all of these that need to match, you've got to flip this over. And yes, it's going to have a little bit of a twisty seam there, but you have to pin at every intersection, and you have to take your fingers and make sure that you nest those seams really well like this. And by nesting, I'm talking about putting it one direction and then the other, and then locking those together with your fingers. You just kind of push them together until there's no gap, and then you're going to pin at a diagonal. And you've got to do that for every single one of these. And I always start on both sides, so I do one side first and then the other. So here I've started on this side, and I work my way to this point, and then I pin 2 sections, and then I pin towards the middle. And I do that because it kind of distributes any kind of weirdness that you may have. If your 1/4 inches are accurate, then what you see here is those seams match. When you push a pin against there, they match right up. And so I'm just taking it and pushing those seams together and putting that pin at a diagonal like that. And I'm going to sew through those intersections. So I've been putting this together, and this is what I mean by this. You take one side of the block, the other side of the block, and you kind of work your way to the middle, and you pin in the middle. You line up those edges. When you have something this big that's 60 inches across, it can get really slippery, and so you need lots of pins. These can just lay flat, and I'm going to pin on the back side because I want to stop and then pull the pin, and that'll keep it where it goes. And so I'm just taking my fingers, putting a little bit of pressure on any seams, and have them go the direction that I want to without stretching them. All right, so once I have that, and I've matched every seam, and that includes these, then I'm ready to go over to my sewing machine and sew a generous 1/4 inch. When I sew my blocks together, I sewed with a nice, solid, generous 1/4 inch, not a scant, because I don't want those to slip around and then I end up with broken seams down the road. And people don't realize that when you put them together, most of the time, most patterns will call for a scant. Are pins more accurate? Yes, they are. Pins are definitely more accurate than clips. Clips are plasticky and they tend to slip on the fabric. So when I have a lot of accuracy, I work with pins instead of clips. It just depends. For my binding, I always use clips. All right, let me get to the sewing machine. And I hope you guys can see, I have my seam guide sitting right here. See if you guys can see if I turn that on. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start up here at the top. When you have a lot of bulk, and I don't know if you guys can see me, I'm going to do full screen. When I have a lot of bulk, what I do is I wad up the entire quilt in my lap, because otherwise your machine will pull it and then you lay it across the top edge. And so I'm laying it across the machine before I lay it down, because what I don't want is for my quilt to shift and to stretch while I'm sewing. So I always have something to support my quilt. Put a folding table, anything you want over to the side, and that helps you. All right, and so then when I take that, I'm going to pull the first pin, and this is why you have a giant pin cushion over here, and I'm going to start with the very first one. If I notice that there's any fullness, I'm going to put the fullness towards the bottom, and in this case, I do back tack. So I'm going to start here, and then once I go in just a couple of inches, I'm going to backstitch one, and that's just to hold it in place. I'm going to make my way slowly to there, and then I'm going to kind of push the fullness out of the way, stick my finger in there to make those edges even, and then I will hold both sides of the fabric with my fingers like this to keep it from kind of distorting and stretching. When I get to a pin, I'm going to kind of walk it over the pin and not through the pin, because that can destroy your sewing machine. And then same thing, I'm just going to make sure that that's straight, and I'm going to get to there. If you have a sewing machine that has a speed control, this is the time to slow it down, not be a speed demon. If you have questions about how to join these blocks, this is a great time to put those in the chat, and I will check that. And so I'm coming through here, and like I said, I'm using my fingers on both sides, and I'm kind of holding the fabric straight. There were places in my blocks where some of my blocks were a tiny bit too generous in some areas. I did not trim them off. I left them there, but I'm trying to line this up so that my 1/4 inch seam stays right here. If you notice, I'm pushing the fabric as I go because I want the weight of that big heavy quilt top to be distributed equally. I don't want it to pull as I sew. And it will do that. Then you'll end up wrestling. It feels like you're wrestling an alligator. All right. And I'm pushing it. Like I said, I like to have a table beside my sewing table. And that just keeps my quilt where it needs to go. If you have to make a jelly roll rug, or if you're doing anything that's free motion, always have something that holds the weight of your quilt so you don't end up with tired shoulders as well. Okay, can you see that? I've got just a smidge of space right there. So I'm not doing a scant, I'm doing a straight 1/4. All right, now I'm getting to the tricky parts, because this is where those seams have to match exactly. Anytime I get to a seam that's exact, I sew up to where the pin is, and then I pull the pin out. And so I'm just pushing it along. Normally, I'm not a person who likes to push and pull when you're making your blocks, but when you're putting this part of the quilt together, I do give it some assistance. Especially if you're working with anything with a bias, like a 45-degree triangle, sometimes they won't match up if you're not careful at this stage. So you're just going to pin that. All right. Now, if you make just the center part of this quilt, it'll finish, if you put a border on it, 60 by 60. But I know that most people's bodies are not square. So what you can do in this case is add a piano key to the top and to the bottom to make it a slightly bit longer so that you end up with a quilt that's like 70 by 60 instead of like 60 by 60. So don't be afraid to modify any of my patterns. I try to use even numbers like 2, 4, 6, 8, because whenever you're working with jelly rolls, all you have to do is increase or decreasing. As long as you're working in increments of 2, the math works out for you. All right, here we go. Almost. I've got one row here. And hopefully I didn't pull my pin too quick, because if you pull your pin too quick, then those seams don't match. Try to avoid breaking a needle at all costs. That is one of those deadly sins that can destroy the timing on your sewing machine. So whatever you do, try not to break your needle. Some needles will bend. I use a 90-14 needle anytime I'm sewing a quilt top together. At the end of my piecing, I piece with an 80-12, but when I get to this part and I'm adding binding and all that stuff, I switch to a 90-14 top stitch needle, and that's because I'm sewing through a lot of seams. Now when I get to the end, I am going to back stitch just a tiny bit. And the reason I do that is because I don't want those seams to fall apart before I put a border on it. All right. Now that I've got this part done, let me show you what comes next. All right. Can you guys see me? All right, so now that I have this, I'm going to pull this off. Let me show you my quilt top. All right. I have been able to match all of those intersections. And let me show you what that looks like. So I'm going to show you up close. As you can see, all of those intersections are matching, right? That one might be off a smidge, but I'll fix it when I press that. And so when I press this, I'm going to fix those seams so that they lay exactly where they need to. And you just check, make sure that you put them all the correct direction, and make sure that all those seams are straight. And so let me show you how I'm going to press this now. Hey everybody. All right, so let me go down here. And so now that I've got this, I always press my quilt from the front first, right? Instead of pressing from the back. And so I will make sure that my seams are laying the way they need to lay. And these are looking pretty good. And then I'm going to spritz this with a tiny bit of starch. Now this fabric has already been starched, but I'm going to spritz it again with just a very light starch. And then I'm going to press by gliding my super hot iron across here and not pushing or pulling. Because what I'm trying to do is make these seams totally flat one last time. And look at that. And I like how that's looking. And so these are looking super flat. And I'm going to be doing the same with all of these seams here. I've pushed them to one side and I've used my little seam roller. So I've used my seam roller on these, and now I can do a final little press. And the flatter those are, the more your long arm quilter is going to love you. Because nobody wants a quilt with a bunch of wobbly seams. All right. And you're just going to press all of those, making sure that these go the right way, as I just stitched this together. So I'm going to take my finger and run it across, use my seam roller, and then press it in the direction that I want it to go. Whenever I finish a quilt top, that is the next thing that I do, is I give it a good pressing. Lightly starch it. and then I hang it on my big design wall and let it rest there until it's ready to be quilted. So I am pressing with the seam, not across the seam, so I'm just going this way so that I'm not distorting or stretching any of those seams. And look at how nice and flat those are turning out. I'm going up this way to the other corner, and then I'm just working my way across the quilt. And I'm liking how these intersections matched up. I think that pinning in this case with actual pins is super essential. Like I said, in most cases, clips are okay, but in this particular situation where you have so many of these precise intersections, super important that you use pins there. All right. I'm going to show you one more, and then I'm going to hang this up, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to do my border on it. Okay. See how that wobbled? It was damp, and it wobbled outward. So you just have to be careful not to get it to wobble. If I want that to come back in, I can always spritz it with water. But you're just trying to keep it straight and not stretch it out. All right, so now I'm going to hang this thing up. I hope I don't break my neck as I go up this ladder, but I'm going to try to go up this ladder. I'm going to take a few pins so you guys can see the finished quilt top. So I'm going to grab some pins. What I have behind me is a backdrop holder, like a photography backdrop holder, and I stretch it. I like it because I can telescope it all the way up. Look at how high it goes. It goes way up there, and I can hang a full-size quilt, and I don't have to crawl around on the floor. These are super inexpensive. I paid like $35 for these two telescoping things. They come across to hang like a photography backdrop, and then I just have batting on there that I've clipped, and I can hang my giant quilts on there. So let me go ahead and hang this up there. I'll try not to break my neck, people. But this is how I manage, and so I'm going to pull this up, and this is the top right corner. And this, my friends, is how I work. I put pins in the top of this ladder, and I hang it up. So let me get up here. All right. Like I said, I hope I don't break my neck. On live TV, that would be really tragic if you guys watched me have to call 911 or something. I think my friends have seen me get injured before, but my live friends have not. Okay. And then I just move my ladder, and this way it saves my knees, and I don't have to crawl around on the floor. One other way that this big backdrop is handy is that sometimes when I'm finished with my quilt, I will just spritz it with a little bit of starch, and I'll let it air dry before I press it to reduce distortion or shrinkage on my quilt. Even though I've already washed the fabric, pre-washed it, what I don't want is to distort it once I'm done. All right. Look, you just get to see me barefoot up here. All right. Let me get this little ladder out of the way. And even though it says danger, don't step on that top step, I actually did it. Sorry, friends. All right. So now you can see this entire quilt. Every block has been put on there. And now it just needs to be starched. Now I could spray the whole thing now, let it dry, and then come back and steam the wrinkles out of it, and then just press the seams. But I like how this is looking, and I don't have anything to unpick because I have spent a lot of time pinning. What do you guys think? So this part is done, right? I think I like it. All right, so in order to finish this quilt, it's looking a little bit small to me. So one of the things that I decided to do is use some of the backing fabric, ta-da, to make a border. Let me show you how I'm going to make that border today that I'm going to be using in this quilt. So what I did is I cut. Hi, everybody. Did you guys see? Be careful. Yeah, I didn't die. So this is done, and now I'm going to show you how I'm going to do the border. So you guys can see one piece of the border over here. So this has a 2.5-inch strip, a 3-inch strip, and a 2.5-inch strip, and I like this because it has all of the colors in the top. And let me show you how I'm doing that, because I'm going to miter it. All right. So let me just show you my hands. So for that border, I'm going to need 8 of the colorful fabric, and I'm going to need 16 of the jelly roll strips. So I'm going to take this, and anytime that I do a border, I attach it at a 45-degree angle. That means I start like this, put it face up towards me. Then I'm going to lay this piece at a 45-degree angle, and you can see all the colors right there are all the colors that were in my jelly roll, which is why I picked this fabric. And I'm going to lay it right sides together, pretty sides touching, and one's going across and one's going down. Now I'm going to use a friction pen because these do erase, and I'm going to do it on the back side. And I'm just going to take it, I'm going to draw a line across. And that's my sewing line. I'm going to sew just to the right of this line. Let me go down so you guys can see it. You see that? I'm going to be sewing just on the right-hand side of this line right there. And this you could clip. You don't have to pin it. I usually pin it. And you're going to do that to all of your pieces. I need 2 pieces for each side because I'm going to miter these. And so I need it like this. And look at all those pretty colors. All right, just like that. 90-degree angle is how you make your mitered corners, because everybody knows that half of 90 is 45. So this is a 45-degree angle that you're sewing there, and you end up with a really, really pretty joined seam. I'm going to put this over here like this, and then I'm going to go over to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew that. This one's going to be really pretty. I'm really liking this one. Let me turn this off so you guys can see. It's pretty bright in here now that it's summer. I don't need all those lights anymore. I am going to be reworking my studio, so school is almost over for summer for me, and I'm going to be reworking this studio so it's easier for you guys to see, and I'm going to be adding more cameras. So stay tuned for all the reworks I'm going to be doing in here. All right, I'm going to sew right through there. This is what this line right here is for, because I line up that drawn line with this line right here, and then it keeps it nice and straight. And I like an open toe sewing foot like this so that you can see where your needle is going. So if you do not have an open toe sewing foot, you should. All right, remember what I said. You're going to lay all the bulk over to the side, and that keeps your stuff from pulling. A lot of people try to put it in their lap. If you just lay it to the side of your sewing machine, that makes your life so much easier. And you're just sewing them like this. You can sew all of them assembly line. No pressure at all. And then this is going to be a pretty cute picnic quilt. I think I'm going to take this somewhere for 4th of July. All right, so here it comes. You can see that now. Let me pull this up. And let me show you what happens next. So now I'm going to pull these. And I'm just going to snip them off, remove those pins. I don't need those pins anymore. And then I'm just going to take, and I'm going to pick one side, it doesn't matter which one, and I'm going to run my fingernail across that seam like that. And with this one, doesn't matter which way it goes. I just need to pick a side and then run my fingernail across. And then what I can do is either cut it with my scissors or cut it with my rotary cutter. But I just need to trim this off. First, straight along that edge, and then at an angle like this. And I leave a generous seam whenever I do this. There's no reason to chop it really small. And because it's on the outside, I just think it gives it a little bit more body. And there we have it. And so when I flip this around, look at how pretty that seam looks. It makes it so where you can barely tell that there's a seam there. And then you just give it a hard press. And look at that seam. It practically disappears, and that's what you want. I typically pick border prints like this that tend to be busier just because it hides a plethora of quilting boo-boos. And so I need one like this for each side. It's 2 pieces by width of fabric. Same with this. I'm just going to trim it even. Come across. I'm going to trim that even. And when I flip that open, that should disguise that seam really nicely. And look at that, you can barely see where it's at. Depending on where the pattern lands, sometimes you can even match the pattern. All right, now that I have those, I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam, and I'm going to add these. But I need to join these together because these are also width of fabric, and they're not quite long enough. So I'm going to take my creams, and just like I did my other stuff, I'm going to sew them a 1/4 inch seam, a 45-degree angle. Who remembers what I said about solid fabric? There's a smooth side and a rough side. The rough side is the wrong side. You're going to put smooth side up, and then you're just going to feel it, and you're going to put smooth side down. So 2 smooth sides together. So fabric like this does have a right and a wrong side. Most people don't think it matters, but you can tell the texture is different. And yes, I'm putting that dark one right there. And then I need to do one more. And I'm going to feel that. That's smooth. So it's smooth side up. And I'm going to grab another one and do the same thing. And I'm going to use 2 strips sewn together to make a full length of that border. And so that means I need a total of 4 strips per side, or 16 strips for this little jelly roll portion of it. All right, so now that I have those lines, I'm going to go ahead and pin those up and take them over to the machine. And you're going to see this line disappear in a minute. All right, so I'm going to sew those up. Somebody said, are you doing an ocean-themed project? Yes, I am. You guys are going to be getting a preview. I have a new quilt that I'm working on, and it's called Krabby Patty. And it's a real fun quilt that's ocean-themed. So you guys are going to be doing Krabby Patty very soon. So here I am. I'm just going to sew just across like I did the other ones. Like I said, lay all the bulk on the bed of your machine and then sew right through that. It's all those little things that add up to really precise blocks. People think there's magic. Really isn't magic. It's just being careful and making sure that you know how to handle your fabric and which way it's stretching. All right. All right, here we go. Now you're going to see those lovely things. And why I use a friction pen, even though that looks terrible, huh? So now you have it. You see that big line? I'm going to take it like this. I hit it with my iron, and that line goes away completely. Now, sometimes people say that ghost lines come back. I'm not worried about it because it's actually in the seam, and so I'm not going to see it if that ghost line does come back. So I only use my friction pen in places where I know for sure that I'm not going to be able to see that. I never use a friction pen on the front of a quilt unless I'm doing thread painting, and I'm going to go over that area with a black thread, and then it doesn't matter. So there we have it. And that seam really gets really flat, and it looks really good. So now that I have that, I'm going to take pretty side to pretty side. So this is going to be pretty side. And then I have to make sure that this seam is facing this direction so I don't have to seam rip this later because that would make me sad. And then I'm going to just take it like this. Now this one doesn't have to be pinned. If you wanted to clip this every so often, you could. Or you could just put a couple of pins just to kind of hold it in place, but you don't really need to, just to kind of get it started. All right, so I'm going to take that to the machine and I'm going to sew 1/4 of an inch on the right hand side. Like I said, this one is 2.5 inches, this one is 3. That's why you see the difference. All right, if anybody is looking for the pattern, you can find it at www.jellyrollclub.com. You can see this is the pattern I'm working on right here. And it's really just a half or a quarter log cabin, technically, is what it's called. And I was going to show you how to do one that's scrappy. So I'm working on a scrappy project using these. So when you see my UFOs later on this summer, you're going to see my scrappy one. All right, so I am working on this one. I started out and then I hold this in my lap. And when I'm doing a long stretch of strip like this, I just drop the entire thing in my lap. And then I stick my finger in the middle like this for accuracy. And then I pull the pieces together. And so this keeps you from going crazy and making sure that you're straight. And so I just stick my finger in there and let my hand guide it. That's the other reason why you put those random pins, it kind of keeps them together. And so if I want to keep it together, I'm just going to hold it, let my hand stop there, and then I stick my finger in there. And that just kind of keeps the two pieces straight and those edges even, especially if you're sewing a long straightaway. One thing that I will tell you is do not push or pull. Just allow the machine to do most of the work when you're doing big long runs like this. When you're joining full-size jelly roll strips, it's tempting to just push or pull that fabric, but don't do that. Most jelly rolls are cut by width of fabric. That means they're across the grain, not with the grain, so they have a little bit of stretch, and that works to your favor for some patterns. But other times it can work against you. Stick your fingers in there, straighten them out, and let that do the work. This is where you can see when you get to the end, I have a lot more fabric of the white than I do this because some bolts only come like in 42 inches instead of 44, and you can see the difference right there. So that's how some companies save money, is they just give you 42 inches instead of 44. It used to be that a yard was 44 by 36 inches, but now it's like anywhere between 40 and 42, sometimes 43. I rarely get a full 44 width anymore out of my printed fabrics. All right, so now that I have this, let me show you what I'm going to do. So now that I have this, I'm going to press this towards the colored fabric because these strips that are on either side are much lighter. Then I'm going to press, first setting the seam, then you're going to flip it over and you're going to press it towards the printed fabric. And to keep it straight, I just sew, I press along the seam. And that's why some quilters, you'll see, they'll just take and they'll just finger press it because that flattens the seam. And that's the easiest thing to do. Or use your seam roller. Your little seam roller like this, you can use it against a table. And that just keeps your seam flat and keeps it from puckering. right there where there's some bulk. I'm going to come in and give it a press to heat up the fabric, and then it flops right over. So heat also allows you to kind of manipulate the fibers a little bit. Water causes it to stretch, heat causes it to shrink. All right. All right. So what are you guys working on now that you guys are finishing up this one? I like how this one turned out, people. This tropical print, this screams summer on this quilt, and so do all these tropical jelly rolls. All right, so now that I have this, I'm just going to do the same thing, and I'm going to sew a 1/4-inch seam on the other side, and I'm going to have a nice, lovely border, and then I will attach those borders to the top and to the bottom first, and then I'm going to do a miter. Now, if you saw my Penny the Penguin video, you saw how to miter these corners. And so I'm going to show you what this looks like. So yes, I got back on my big dangerous ladder here. And so this is what it looks like when it's done. Do you guys see that? Let me show you. I'm going to lay this down so you guys can see it. So this is what it looks like when it's done. And this will measure, let me see. When this is finished, it measures 6.5 inches. So I'm going for a 6.5 inch border. And I think that this is going to look nice because this will close off the bright colors. It gives it all of the colors in the quilt, and then it gives it another spot. I'm going to use the same print on the back. And I'm not sure what the name of this fabric is, but it's from Hobby Lobby. I know some people are not fans of Hobby Lobby, but this is a standard Hobby Lobby print, and they were on sale 40% off, which is why I bought it. Like a textile cotton. Let me see if I can find the name anywhere on here. No, it doesn't say. But I will find it for you guys really quick if you guys want me to see, or if you guys want to see where I bought it. So let me go to my desktop, and then let me pull up Hobby Lobby. I'm not sure if you have a Hobby Lobby where you are, but if you go to tropical fabric and you pull it up, it's this one right here. It's called Tropical Leaf Flamingo is the name of this fabric. And that's what I got. And I got it 40% off, and it's really soft, combed cotton, and it washes really nice. So that's what I'm using on the back of mine. It's just a bunch of flamingos, and that's what it's called, Tropical Leaf Flamingo, SKU number 1724210. All right, everybody, that's all that I'm going to be doing to this thing now. Is I'm just going to make these. These are definitely wider than what I need. If you notice this is wider than what I need because that allows me to miter it. So if I'm going to miter it, I'm going to need an excess of 6 inches. So I need 6 inches more on each side. That's just so I can put these together. But I'm going to put these on either side of this quilt. And then I'm going to do a little piano key type thing across the top and bottom just to give it length. And then I'm going to call it a day. But I'm definitely going to be hanging this across the foot of the bed this summer. And then I'm probably going to take this quilt to the beach. And so this is what it's going to look like once I attach it. It's going to be the cream in here that's in all of these, then this tropical border, and then the tropical border on the back. And I think that will look really nice, especially if I do a navy along the edge. All right, friends, that is all that I'm doing. I just wanted to show you how I'm going to finish this thing. But I've got to finish the rest of my borders, so I will do that without you guys. It's already 6:39. I've got to get ready for the week, but I'm going to be working on a quilt pattern, and I'm calling it Krabby Patty. You guys are going to like it. And so it's an ocean-inspired theme, and let me show you the fabric I'm using for that. Let me close this and get it out of the way. But Krabby Patty is going to be made with ocean-themed center panel. So if you have an ocean-themed center panel of your choice anywhere, I found this. This is a yard of fabric. And I got this at Hancock's of Paducah. It's called Turtle Bay by Deborah Edwards. And this is a piece of fabric. So you can see I'm teasing, right? And it's just 1 yard, and it looks like the ocean on top. And then it looks like the beach on the bottom with sand and seashells. And so this is going to be the center of my quilt. And then you're going to see the pretty design. So this was my inspiration piece. I ordered a yard of this fabric. And then the rest is going to be scrappy from my stash, but it's going to be called Krabby Patty. So I'm working on the final pattern. I'm going to post it on my website, and it's going to have a series of blocks that we're going to do every other week until we get it done. So it should be done by the end of summer. All right, everybody, I hope you guys are having a wonderful week. I got 2 weeks, and you know, at the end of the year, kids act a little crazy at school. But yeah, this is going to be great. Remember, if you want to do the ocean-themed quilt and you don't have access to this particular print, you can make the same thing with batiks, with scraps, and I'll show you how to do that if that's what you want to do. So this is called Turtle Bay by Northcott. So if you want some of that, you can start working on that. But that is my next quilt. I also have, let me show you guys on my website what I'm going to be working on. I have a pattern. You guys did not go to the Facebook page. Let me show you. So if you go to Facebook, I've got one that's coming up. Here, let me switch to my Jelly Roll Club. And so if you've noticed, we're going to be working on this project. And this one doesn't even have a name yet, but this is our next one. This one can be made scrappy. It can be made with a controlled color palette. You can do it so that it's patriotic and it becomes a quilt of valor. If your particular country has different colors or your flag, you can do different colors. But this is with a gold or a darker, more jewel tone, and this is with a lighter colorway. But yeah, this is what we're working on next. And then I'm going to be posting stuff for Krabby Patty. And then we also have My Happy Place. I've got like 3 things coming down the pike. We're going to do Krabby Patty for the summer. We're going to do My Happy Place in the fall, starting, I was going to start this one, but I think I'm going to move Krabby Patty ahead of it. And then I'm going to do this as a single jelly roll pattern for those who want to use their scraps. All right, everybody, that is it. Go ahead and go out there and make beautiful things with your scraps. I have enough in my solid jelly roll bin that I can make another one. And so this is what I do with my scraps whenever I have a project. These are the leftovers from the blocks behind me, and then these are the colors and the creams. So I'm just going to leave it in here, and I'm going to put a note that I use this for Hip to Be Square. So if I want to make a second one, I have enough for a second one, which I'm going to make. All right, everybody, you guys have a wonderful week, and I will see you guys not next Sunday, but the Sunday after that. I'm going to get all the patterns ready. I'm going to put up the stuff on the website and get it all ready for you. But if you like this page, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends. I've got a lot of stuff coming down the pike. My brain is alive. It's thinking of lots of quilts to do. All right, everybody, you guys have a wonderful week. I will see you guys later. Bye, everybody. Have a wonderful Mother's Day. I hope you got lots of rest today.